Leon, let me get this straight. You've written 2 different white papers, plus at least 2 different lab episodes, plus a THWAC Camp 2017 session with Kevin, Brian, and Josh, plus a THWAC Camp 2016 session that all talk about alerting. Why are we doing this again?
Because your alerts are bad and you should feel bad.
That's not an answer.
Okay, let me ask you this. As a SolarWinds engineer, when you're working with folks, what is the #1 issue you come across?
False positives from alerts that end up being perceived as noise.
I rest my case. Alerts are one of the core features that people focus on when implementing or improving their monitoring environment. And on top of that, alerts are often misunderstood. I've seen it with folks I meet at user groups. I've seen it in the SolarWinds booth at conventions, and in posts on THWAC.
What surprises me is that this isn't just a newbie thing. I've seen poorly built alerts from folks with years of experience using and maintaining monitoring.
And because they're so important and so prone to challenges, I wanted to share some of your engineering wisdom with the THWAC Camp community. So let's dive in with some introductions. I'm head geek, Leon Adato.
And I'm senior sales engineer, Mario Gomez.
So I think the first thing we need to do is dig into the philosophy of alerting a little bit. One of the comments that we heard in some of those past episodes was that alerts are somewhat predictable. They're not completely unknown, right?
Right.
But they're unwanted. You know, you don't want them to happen,
No.
But you know that they could happen. That's why you set up the alert in the first place, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Dave Josephson put it as, this is unscheduled work.
It is. It is. It's something that stops you in the middle of your day. You got to pay attention to it. You got to jump on it and get it taken care of.
Okay, but what if people set up alerts where they're not paying attention to it? What if they're...
Well, then what's the point of an alert?
Okay, so that, I think that's what I'm getting at, is that an alert is unscheduled work, an unscheduled interruption, but sometimes folks design their alerts and then they find that, well, it's not really that important. It's not really that big a deal, right? That, as Kevin Sparenberg said, if you have an email rule that takes the alerts that are coming in and puts them in a folder or deletes them or whatever, you've already lost.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people guilty of that. I myself have been guilty of that. You know, before I was a sales engineer, I was actually a systems engineer for a number of years. Worked with quite a few different monitoring products at quite a few different places. And in my younger years, I had, you know, my little filters set up. So I can filter off these alerts into another, you know, little folder, whatever program I was using for my email at the time. And it was really easy to just start ignoring those alerts.
Right.
So then what's the point of the alert?
Right. So that's the wrong way of thinking. What's the right way of thinking? What should I think about alerts when they come?
It is something that has to be actionable by somebody. So you have to be able to take an action. You have to pay attention to it, first and foremost. You want it to be meaningful. You don't want noise coming into your inbox, right? You want use reports where reports are needed.
Okay.
You know, that informational, those are all reports all day long. Alerts are something that I need to pay attention to. I need to jump on. I need to have some kind of action that I can take for that alert. And
if they're not, then you need to tweak the alert to make it more actionable.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things I hear a lot is, well, when I get the first one, I don't do anything, but if I get 5 in, you know, a half an hour, that's when well, how about we just send you one alert after the thing has occurred 5 times in half an hour, so that you know you need to move. I like that idea. One of the questions I get asked a lot, though, is, well, I have a heartbeat monitor. I have something that goes out and it says, it's okay. It's still okay. Is that an alert? What is that?
I mean, it's a little bit informational, but I guess it depends on what that device is. So it's another important aspect to alerting. Identify those systems that need the deeper alerting. Identify those systems that maybe don't need that deeper alerting. If it is just something that you want to monitor for up-down, that's fine, getting that heartbeat so that you know when it's down. But I mean, it really is, you have to take the time, you have to put in the time. And a lot of people will just enable all their alerts out of the box.
Right.
Easy way to start ignoring alerts, right? And an easy way to start annoying everybody around you as well, especially if you're, you know, putting in that help desk email address to begin with, instead of just, hey, let me test it out by sending it to myself first. right?
Right. Now we're going to get to some of that in a little bit. I think we should dive into the process of building a good alert. All right.
Sounds good.
So SolarWinds has done a really good job in their alert engine of dividing out the trigger and the trigger condition and the scope. So talk a little bit about that. What's the difference between the scope and the trigger? Why do we divide those?
So the scope is those objects that you want to have affected by this alert, right? So if I wanted to send my Exchange admins, right, all of the alerts for Exchange, my application, I could create a scope, take into account maybe the node type, the node name, the operating system, maybe the application running on it, and I can create the scope. Much like we see here, I've tailored this just to look at systems with operating system information where it's a Windows Server 2012 system,
right,
and where the IP address starts with a 10.110. Right? That may go to a certain group of people.
Right.
I don't want to bug other people, right, who just may ignore this alert.
Right. But the key here is that none of that is what we would consider the alert trigger, right?
No.
It's not that, oh my gosh, you have a Windows server, ah! I mean, if you're a Linux person like me, you might be a little bit disturbed about it, but that's not the point. That none of the things in the scope are the problem. They simply tell you this is the group of machines to which this condition, which we haven't talked about yet, is going to apply.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Limit that scope. And it kind of goes back to ignoring alerts, making it less easy, I guess, to ignore those alerts.
Right.
Because this is tailored for you and your group. It's not network team, it's not database team, it's not any of those other guys. It is for your team.
Right.
You need to pay attention to it.
So the other thing about the scope, having the scope split out, is that then you can have something like this, where it says show a list. Now I know all the devices that this is going to apply to. In this case, it's my demo system, so I don't have a lot in here, but that machine it could potentially be affected by it. And I can use this in a report. I can use this in a variety of ways to let people know where it's going to affect. The next thing, though, is when you trigger, right? Right now we're saying when it's equal to down, but I think that once you get past the up-down, when you start to talk about, let's say CPU is over 80, or bandwidth is less than or greater than or whatever, we start to run into a trap with the numbers. The numbers trip us up. So talk a little bit about that. Like why do numbers make a problem for us?
So numbers make a problem because it's something I mentioned earlier, right? There's those nice-to-have systems, and then there's those critical systems. Those critical systems may have completely different thresholds, right? I don't want to alert based off of CPU exceeding 80%. I want to alert based off of CPU exceeding 70%.
On this one system?
On this one system, maybe, right? Or maybe this small group of systems as well. So do I really want to come into my alert and say, hey, I have a hard set 80% for CPU utilization, or greater than 80%? Depending on how many systems I have in my environment, I may have a ton of alerts that I need to go create.
Right, which are all effectively the same except for that number.
Exactly.
Right, okay, so there's the problem.
Yep.
We're going to talk about 3 different ways to fix it. The first one is one of my favorites, custom properties. I've talked a lot about custom properties. I will continue to talk about them. I think they really are one of SolarWinds' superpowers. If we take a look here at this particular node, I've got a custom property for CPU thresh, or thresh, I misspelled it, thresh crit, the critical at 80, and the warning at 60. So now, instead of triggering when CPU is over 80 in the alert, I can actually specify when the utilization is greater than whatever is in this field. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So here what I have is a test alert, because I was just throwing it together. But the idea is that here, when the CPU load of the node is greater than or equal to whatever number is in that value. So now that I have that custom field, a custom property in the table, I can set a number that's different for every single node, and yet I have exactly one alert that's going to trigger on that one. So that's one of the first ways that you can set a threshold where it's a per node, and you don't get this whole rampant, 300 of the same kind of alert. But I think that we built in another way to deal with it that I'd like you to talk about, the idea of having those same thresholds built into the node details.
Yeah, and custom properties are great. As you mentioned, I love custom properties as well. Makes it easier to filter things, makes it easier to set the scope of my alert using custom properties. And as you just showed, makes it easier to set that threshold.
Right.
Another way to set the threshold would be go back to the same place, edit your node, and if you look all the way down at the bottom, you're going to have threshold settings.
Right.
And what you'll also notice is that you do have the option to override your general thresholds. Right? So I don't have to use those global thresholds that are set across everything. I can set my thresholds per node using this as well. And I can manually set my thresholds in here. So, I've got my 75% for my warning state and my 80% for my critical state. But another fantastic thing that SolarWinds has done is give us 7 days of monitoring that node. And then I can actually calculate the thresholds using some baseline data.
So tell me more about this. What is the baseline data? What do we mean by that?
So I'm going to look at your minimum. I'm going to look at the maximum over that past 7 days. I'm going to calculate your standard deviation. Then I'm going to come back and tell you, hey, this is what I think your warning should be, and this is what I think your critical should be, based off of that 7 days of data that we've collected.
Got it.
So kind of make it easy for you, right? If everything's been running fine, yeah, let me grab that data and I'll set those as thresholds. And if it gets exceeded, let me take a look at that.
Right, so we're looking at the baseline data for this node right
Correct.
here. And that way you're not, so one of the key concepts here though, that I think takes a while for people to wrap their head around is the idea that it is critical or it is warning is in itself a state.
Exactly.
That we're so used to from old monitoring tools and old ways of thinking. We think, well, but what number is it? What number? No, critical is the value. It is the thing. So whether it's critical because I used a custom property and I said it's critical, whether it's critical because I used that fixed baseline, or whether it's critical because based on the normal utilization of this node, I have now determined it is exceeding, maybe this box always runs hot. Maybe it always runs at 92, so critical is going to be 95 for this machine based on its utilization. And the same thing for low utilization or memory or whatever it is. So there you're not triggering on it is 80. You're triggering on it is critical, and the system is using the data you have to say, here's how I know what critical is. It's just a little shift in thinking, right?
Right, yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, it goes back to, do I need to create 100 alerts, each one specific to a different system, or can I have one alert that instead of looking at hard numbers, I'm looking at state? Right. Is it in a warning state? Fire the alert.
And this gives us sort of a progression of thinking for folks who are maybe a little newer to SolarWinds, where you've got, you can use the custom properties, you can use the built-in thresholds, you can put a fixed number, you can use in the critical plug. So again, you're going away from numbers and into a state critical, and finally using the baseline data. There's one other twist, and all credit goes to our THWAC MVPs, Josh Bigley and Zach Muchler, who came up with a way to subscribe to alerts, meaning the alert is there already, and you change something about the device, and therefore it has subscribed into an alert category, an alert class. So I want to use some information that Josh actually shared with us at the Toronto SWUG not too long ago. So this concept still leverages the idea of custom properties. There are 3 custom properties where you've got the component crit down, which is a yes, no. Am I going to say that crit down is meaningful for this device? What's the delay time? 0 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, et cetera. And what's the severity? What's the severity that matters? So those are 3 custom properties that have to be in place. Okay. These are the custom properties that the owner of the node can adjust. They can say, I don't want an alert until 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. They control that element. They can control whether this device actually is going to get an alert or not by using the yes/no box for, do I want the critical down? And the same thing for severity. Do I want an alert on warning or critical or what have you? That's the first piece. The second piece is now the alert construction, where I'm saying when the critical down is yes, where the severity is critical, okay, there's my scoping, because there are custom properties. Meanwhile, also I want to know where the delay is, in this case, 0 minutes, or it's nothing. That's just my fallback. So those are all scoping statements. That's not the trigger. That's the scoping statement. The trigger is going to be something like, and it's critical, right? Or down. Or down in this case. But the alert exists outside of which machines matter. The users, the owners of the machines, now can subscribe to it simply by changing custom properties that I've given them permission to go adjust.
Nice, I like that.
So, and there you have, just to get an idea, so I have the 0 minutes critical, 0 minute warning, 10-minute critical, 10-minute warning, and so on and so forth. And they can choose by those 3 values which one they want for that. So the idea is that when you're building good alerts, you have a variety of techniques, I think, available to you.
Right.
Okay, so the next thing I want to jump into is what are some really good ways to test those alerts? Now that I have some ideas, I want to make sure I don't blow up my environment while I'm testing. So let's take a second and talk about what are some good things, some good test habits to have. So when we talk about testing alerts, I think the first thing I want to get out is not email, okay? Just putting out there, you know what? If you have your alerts going to email, you do you, right? But it's a horrible way to test it.
Explore your options.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
we have a slew of actions that you can take.
Like what? What are your favorites?
Execute an external program. Execute an external VB script.
For testing?
You can do it for testing, especially for testing, right? You want to make sure that script works before you start using it in production.
Okay, fair enough.
Also limit the scope of your alert.
All right.
Choose a system that you can test against before you start sending your alerts to everybody else.
So that's a good one.
Applying them to every other system.
So that's a good one, but I want to take a step back for a second because there's a few other actions that I do like when you're, instead of sending something to email, send it to a log file. Just a text log file. It requires far fewer resources on the polling engine. It's just a simple text. You can tail it. You can, copy it over to another machine, whatever you want to do. You want to take all the variables that you're going to use in your ultimate alert, whether it's email or a ticket, better a ticket. But you can say, is this variable populating? Am I getting the information I need? If I'm running an after action, like collecting the top 10 processes, am I actually getting it? But a text file is an easier way. The other one that's there, but people don't think of as a testing thing, is the NPM log, that thing that shows up in the message center. You can use that. So you know that, event occurred here, there's my information. That's another one. I like your idea of scripting, though. I like the idea of taking all those variables, putting them into a script, and sending information away or acting on it in some way. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit.
Sure.
But back to your point, limiting the scope. So we're looking at an alert here. Tell me what you mean about that.
So in this case, we've actually just narrowed it down to one system. That's the system we want to use for testing. It's a system that maybe I have set up that I can easily reboot if I wanted to, shut it down. That way I can test all the different conditions that I want to set up, my trigger conditions that I want to set up for this node.
Got it. So when I'm first working on the trigger, go to one node. What's the next step? So this is my test box, and like you said, I can bounce it, I can delete it, I can abuse it in all sorts of horrible ways. So after the alert works, I think pretty well. What's the next thing I do? How do I go from there? Just go to production?
No, actually, you don't want to just do that. You want to check in with the teams that are responsible for those systems as well, right?
All right.
So I want to start pinging it off of them and let them know, hey, look, here's what the action that I'm taking, here's the information that I'm including. Does this look good to you? Is this the information that you're looking for that'll help you, as we talked about earlier, take some kind of action based off of this alert?
Got it. So instead of just sending them the email, hey, and just hammering them, again, unscheduled interruption.
Right.
You're going to receive the email yourself. You're going to make sure it works, and then you're going to forward it to them and say, this is what I was thinking of, and let them have that conversation.
Exactly.
Okay. And meanwhile, probably expand the scope out to, instead of that one machine, expand it out to maybe a few. You'd just put name, if it's this name or this name or this name, so you'd have few to pick from?
Yeah, maybe talk to them ahead of time and ask them for a few good test boxes.
Okay.
A lot of environments will have, their dev environment, or they'll have a test environment that we can maybe use in order to get the information that we're looking for.
Right.
Well,
and
we
test
need to
it.
bounce one of their systems because they want to see it with theirs.
So, and then test it out, make sure that they're getting the information they need. And again, what are you going to do about this? What's the action you're going to take? Oh, I just like getting the information every morning. Nuh-uh, that's
I'll send you a report.
That's a report, exactly.
We talked about that.
Wonderful. So one of the other things is that I like to say is that it's not a production alert until it happens in the wild. Not a test, you've done all that stuff. It's now in your production system, but I still don't consider it done until one has occurred in the wild. Why is that?
It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. These alerts are constantly querying the database.
Really?
So if I have a number of these alerts and I'm not using half of them because they never occurred, what's happening to my database on the back end every time they're querying?
Right.
I'm putting load on that database that I don't need to put on the database.
Right. I think a lot of our users don't realize on that first screen where most people only focus on the title is this area right here, evaluate the frequency of the alert. So this is how often that query runs. And this is a query. You should be optimizing it. You can there's a way to pull the SQL out of this, and you can evaluate that using, for example, SQL Management Studio, their query plan. You can test it, and if you find that you've got an alert, a custom alert, that takes 30 seconds to run, every minute you've got a 30-second query that's banging against your database. You don't want to first of all, you want optimal alert queries. Second of all, the ones that you've optimized, you want only the ones you really need. Running against the database. So that's an important point that we need to just emphasize, is that these alerts do have a load, they do have a cost in terms of performance. So you want to treat them, be conscious of that as you go.
Right. I see it way too often where somebody just enables every alert that comes out of box, and that's just hammering the back end. It's causing issues, performance issues. It's a lot of noise that you really don't need.
Right. So that sort of takes us to the things you do after the alert triggers, right? You've alerted it, you've triggered, and we've talked about send it to a log file, send it to the NPM log, don't send it to email. One of the things that surprises me is how many folks overlook the idea that the tools can do way more than just send a message out. There's a lot of actions it can take. I've got an example up here, but give me an idea, like what's going on here?
So yeah, I mean, what we're doing, of course, is our trigger actions. Based off of that trigger condition that we set, what do we want to do when that event occurs? And I get asked about this a lot. So I have to show them the slew of actions that we have available beyond just send an email.
Okay.
So looking at this example here, we're actually executing a program, or in this case, it's actually a Perl script, it looks like, that we're executing. So we're restarting the server.
Because Perl is happy.
Yeah. And when we're adding some delays in here too, so taking advantage of, we call them escalations, it doesn't necessarily have to escalate to somebody else.
Good point.
Right?
Okay.
We could just wait a little while and then trigger another action.
Right.
So in this case, we're giving it about 10 minutes, and then we're going to trigger a vMotion event to occur. Right? So we're going to vMotion that system to another host. We're going to wait another 10 minutes. We're going to reboot that virtual machine.
Right.
As you can see, okay, that didn't work. Let's try restarting the whole virtual machine. And then we're going to wait another 10 minutes. And if all of that still fails, well, actually, we got an email action there, don't we?
Guilty. Guilty as charged. Okay, it is my demo system. It is my dev system, so I'm not integrated into it.
Don't worry about it. Email is still the #1 action that most people take with their alerts.
Right.
But there's so much more you can do.
Right, and I think one of the points to bring home is that when people see the word escalation, you're right. They think about, well, if the first person doesn't respond, we'll tell the second person. If the second doesn't respond, we'll tell their boss and whatever. And that is a valid concept of escalation. But you can also escalate if my little change, if restarting the service didn't help, then let me try this other thing. And if that didn't help, let's try this other thing, right? Including, and again, people overlook the idea that it doesn't have to do something. It can also just do some additional information gathering. The point is that your monitoring system is there at the moment something went wrong, right? So why not have it do the things at that moment instead of waking somebody up out of bed or pulling them away from their meeting or what have you, and having them execute that action right away. The way to think about it is when I'm setting up an alert, I ask people, okay, so you get this alert, what are you going to do next? Oh, I'm going to jump on the box and type the gfrinkle command. Well, how about I type the gfrinkle command for you, and then I tell you whether it worked or not. So that's the idea behind these actions, whether it's a script, a custom PowerShell script, or a Perl script, or what have you, or what have you, some built-in actions. We're going to do that. We can even gather information so that when the event occurs, I can gather all sorts of things, find out what's going on, and the person who does respond knows, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried this other thing. Here's some more information about what the condition was after doing those things. Now you go. You can actually boost somebody half an hour, 45 minutes into the future in terms of their problem solving. By just doing it for them so that when they get the ticket, A, they know it's important, B, they know that all those basic things have been done, and C, they can pick up where the human brain has to pick up. So here's an example of that information gathering. We've got a built-in program where, time process polar.exe. This is built in. It actually comes with server and application monitoring. It's a program. It's an exe. It will actually run against Linux machines also. I tried that out, and it works. I'm really excited about that. You'll find one of our canned alerts top 10 processes. I think it's high CPU top 10 processes. You don't use that alert. We don't include it so that you should, because I think it says when CPU is 80, which is ridiculous. We just wanted to show you that this could be done, that we can gather the information, and then that collection of information is then pumped into, in this case, an email. But we can add that information and inform. So you say, hey, the CPU was high. This was the time. Here were the top 10 processes sorted by CPU utilization, and go on. So again, you can do things, or you can gather information. All right, so let's take a look. I want to take a look at the actions. Let's just take a quick tour. Of which are the ones that you like. This is a long list. We're not going to go through all of them. But and actually, are these all the things you can do with our tools?
These are all the actions we have available. They're not all available to all modules. It really depends on some of the modules you have installed. I mean, for example, execute an NCM action. You got to have Network Configuration Manager in order to do that, obviously. Manage your VMs, you have to have our Virtualization Manager. But these other ones, they're all available to pretty much all the modules.
So you may see more, depending on the modules we have. You may see less. That's the only point I wanted to make there. So which are your favorites?
I like the execute an external program, execute an external VB script. If something can take care of it for me, why not let it? Another thing that I like to use is the restart IIS site application pull. Again, if something can take care of it for me, that is an alert that is specific to SAM using our App Insight for IIS template. I can have it automatically restart my IIS site. An example, when I was doing systems engineering, we had a application, had a front-end web, and it had memory leaks. So what we would do is we set up an alert so that when that memory hit a certain level threshold, we initiated this action. Let's go ahead and restart the application pull, get everything back under control until the vendor could actually fix the leak that it had. And as far as those multi-step actions, the one I like to mention to folks, especially at conventions and at SWUGs, is the first thing you do is you reset the application pool. That's the easiest, gentlest. The people who are connected won't lose their connection. The next step you do is you restart a service. So you can do that. The next one after that is you reboot the server.
the next one after that, then you cut a ticket or you do whatever. But you can actually have that cascading escalation of actions where they're getting harsher and harsher and harsher.
Yeah.
But but you need to take those evasive maneuvers, because if resetting the application pool didn't fix it, the human who responds, what are they going to do? They're going to restart IIS. That's just what they're going to do.
Yep. Why not take care of it for them ahead of time?
Right.
And there's one other thing I wanted to mention. It's a little off topic, I guess. The alert actions themselves. If you look at something like send an email, I know it's not your favorite.
Right.
But you can also set time of day sets.
That's right.
I like to call it a little bit of follow the sun, right? If I can give my guys a break when they get out, give them a break. Set that alert to send to somebody else during a certain time of day.
Got it.
I can have multiple email actions in one alert, each one specific to a certain time of day.
So you have conditionals, so you have actions that are
people.
conditional to time of day. That's awesome. So you don't have to have three. I think in the past, folks have, in different tools, people have set up alerts where they have, time zone 1, node is down. Time zone 2, node is down. Here you can have one alert action that says, what time is it? Okay, great. Now, of course,
These are the guys that it goes to.
Right, and of course, that's the time zone that the primary polling engine is in. So you still have to think from that perspective.
You do.
Okay. All right, that's a great point, is that your actions can be time of day sensitive. So if it's 2 a.m., I'm going to do this thing. If it's 9 a.m., I'm going to do this other thing.
Right.
I like that. So you mentioned one that you like. The one I am really intrigued with is changing a custom property.
Oh yeah, that was a great one.
So this is one that has a lot of people scratching their heads. Now, we talked about custom properties earlier, of course, but why would I change a custom property in reaction to an alert? And to explain this, I want to actually refer to one of our other THWACAP sessions this year, which is the automation session with Zach and Kevin Sparenberg and myself, where we were talking about, I actually showed a script that would change the polling cycle. It would use the software developer kit, and it would change the polling cycle for a node interactively.
Nice.
So what you can imagine happening is that this node encounters some kind of problem. It's polled at a relatively sedate, slow, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes. It's not really aggressive, right? All of a sudden, it's getting a little wobbly. It's not down yet. And so the alert does nothing except change the custom property so that it says, well, this is now critical, or this is something I want to take a close look at. My software developer kit cycle, the job that's watching says, oh, let's amp up the polling cycle. Let's start to be more aggressive, collect more information in more of a real-time or near real-time manner. And now I have that information, and maybe that causes another alert to trigger based on, or it says, no, actually it's okay, and it sets it back again. So you can do that. You can change custom properties for a variety of reasons. The other one is with our SAM product. You can, if you belong to a group, you can apply a template to a group membership.
Yep.
So if I change a custom property, so this node now belongs to a particular group based on that query, now an application template is applied. Once that's no longer necessary, we change the custom property back. The template is unapplied. So you can have almost a whole level, a whole set of monitoring automation where things are automatically ratcheting up and ratcheting down, and you're gathering information and insight, and then when it's no longer necessary, you pull it out, just with that one feature.
Right.
And I've mentioned something a couple of times now, which is the software developer kit. So I want to take a minute and I want to talk about why that is such a powerful aspect of our solution set. I think for a particular segment of the SolarWinds user community, it inspires joy and happiness and the wonder of possibilities, and that is a very particular segment where I think that Patrick is perhaps the poster child for. But for a lot of folks, it's like programming, include me out, right?
Right.
I really want to take a moment and explain that it's not necessarily hardcore programming. It just allows you to integrate the SolarWinds toolset with a variety of other things, or to create enhancements that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. All right, so there's my commercial. But I want to talk about some of the things you can do, or that we have done in the past, to exemplify it. And the first one we actually showed back in lab episode 40. where we integrated our Orion, our dev environment, our Orion environment with our Slack channel, the Head Geek Slack channel.
Nice.
Right, because why wouldn't you?
Sure.
So take a look at this. This is just a clip from the video where the alert action. So the alert action execute a script. Okay.
Awesome.
What you're looking at on the screen is a PowerShell script. You can see that there. And we're running the phub geek slack sender.ps1. There's his PowerShell script.
Pulling some variables, it looks like.
Right. So it does something, and we're pushing the variables out of the alert message, just like you would into an email or the NPM monitor. So it's the same variables, and we're pushing it to this script. What is that script, you might ask? There we go. That's part of it. Yeah, Patrick is a real programmer. I'm just a script kiddie, so he really did it right. You can see that we've got some parameters in there. You can see the caption, the status, and things like that up at the top. We're hooking into our Slack channel. We've got a date format there. We're doing a bunch of stuff. All right, with those variables, we're processing it to connect into Slack and to send that message into our Slack channel, which looks like that. You look at the bottom of the screen here, and you can see that our Orion bot is sending us a message about an interface that's down. And we even have clickable links. We can acknowledge the link. There's a clickable link there that I think this is partway through the episode, so we hadn't quite tweaked the acknowledge link in there, but that's another option there. So these are the kinds of things that can be done. As a side note, we actually documented this. We have a ebook, the partially incomplete guide to integrating SolarWinds in Slack. But you can find that on Thwack. Also, we'll have it in the show notes. But that's just one example of the kinds of things you can do with the SDK. It's a little extreme. All right, most people use the SDK to automate their environment, to maybe scan a subnet, or when something's added to the asset management system to automatically add it into. So that's more of what we talk about, but the SDK has some real chops to it.
Oh yeah.
Another example that came up on Thwack just not too long ago was Jira integration. Somebody actually went through, and I'm not going to go all the way through it, but with screenshots and everything, because that's why I love Thwack, is our users love to share things, how to integrate their Jira environment with SolarWinds, and that was through the SDK. You can, of course, use the SDK to integrate with your ticket system. Right? If you have, let's say, Remedy or something like that, you can, as long as it is a RESTful system, you can do that. But I think there's another way to integrate with a ticket system, at least one particular ticket system.
Right. So out of the box, we actually have integration into ServiceNow.
Okay, so
cloud platform.
Let's talk through how do we do that. We're here in the all settings area. Where do I go from there?
You want to go down to your ServiceNow instances. It's under your alerts and reports section. And basically add your instance in.
So from here, you would have to know, and we're not going to walk through all of this, but it's not a lot. You put in the instance and the credentials that you're doing, and at that point, what does that give you? What does that buy you besides just I've used ServiceNow. I know I can email into ServiceNow. Why is this better?
Well, if you noticed when we were showing all the actions, one of the actions was create a ServiceNow incident.
Okay.
So now instead of just getting an email or taking any of those other actions, I can open a ticket.
Okay.
And I can keep it in sync with my alert.
That's the thing. That's the one, is that it's not just open a ticket, because like I said, I can send an email in and ServiceNow will process an email. But when the status changes, let's say that the event triggers, the box is down or whatever it is, and then 5 minutes later it's back up. My reset action can then update the ServiceNow ticket automatically.
Yep.
Right? So now you have this bi-directional communication that you can do. And by the way, while we've built that integration for ServiceNow, if you're using the SDK, you can still do that because SolarWinds receives RESTful information as well as being able to send it out. Right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a tour of the SDK and some alert actions. So I'm really happy with where we've left this.
I am as well.
Good.
I think we showed off a lot of the capabilities, not to be afraid of alerts, right? They're your friend. They help you out in sticky situations.
Right.
We always talk about being proactive as opposed to being reactive. That's what monitoring is all about. You want to try and get to it before too many people notice.
Right.
If anybody, hopefully nobody.
Right. Like I said, when the system's getting a little wobbly, and that's where your alert actions can jump in there and take care of it before something horrible happens.
Exactly. The truth is that crafting good alerts is something of an art form, right? I know we've been talking about how alerts go wrong, but plenty of folks get it really, really right too.
That's a fair point. And I like your analogy because artistic endeavors are something that everyone can do, everyone can improve with practice, attention to detail, and a little coaching.
That's where all of those other resources I mentioned at the start of this session come in. You can find links to them in the notes for this recording.
Thanks for the plug. Also, thanks for coming on and doing the session with me. Why don't you close us out?
For THWAC Camp 2018, I'm Mario Gomez.
And I'm Leon Adato. Thanks for watching.